Welcome to the Writing Channel with Nick Cole. I am Nick Cole. We are here to talk about space battles tonight and how to write them. It is good to see everybody already in the comments. Tom KP, what are you up to? You're eating tacos tonight. That is awesome. Eddie Thet with hot sauce. Of course, it ain't tacos unless there's hot sauce. I made carnitas tacos this weekend, and the people that I made them for immediately went home and texted me for the recipe. So I guess they were that good. By the way, I got a lot of carnitas hanging out. So we should be live tonight on X. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, our own channel is showing up to talk over the background. We should be live on Rumble. We should be live on, let's see. Yep, it's saying we're live there. It's saying we're live on YouTube. So we are live. This is the Office Hour show with Nick Cole for the Writing Channel. If you're joining us on YouTube or X, generally each week you can jump in and ask questions in the comment, and sometimes I'll put up the banner and you can copy the link and come on in and ask questions if you want to know anything about what some people call independent writing, indie writing, trade pub. I did work for Trade Pub when I was at HarperCollins, wrote the Old Man in the Wasteland series over there, wrote Soda Pop Soldier, wrote CTRL ALT Revolt, got fired for writing something that they didn't think anybody should read. And then went back to being an indie, wrote Galaxy's Edge and Forgotten Ruin and Strange Company. And I believe sometime at the end of this summer, we should have the next series that is coming out. Jay Canada says, what's up, Medusa? Medusa is in the chat tonight, monitoring the comments. Sparky says he can only lurk for a view count. I'll watch the VOD later. I'm on the road. Boss, keep both hands on the road. Don't bother about watching the channel. We want you to be safe. It is good to hear from you and see you, though, as it is good to hear and see from everybody. So I thought I'd do a little series, and I'm hoping to keep it to about 3 shows. And tonight will really be the first of those shows, though last week was kind of the primer that I talked about with my writing partner in a new science fiction series that I have coming up called Warhawk Marines, which just talked to the audio people today, and that is going into production. So we're very excited about that. Tonight, if you listened last week, you heard me say that I kind of have a method for writing not Space Marine, but big ship battles. Space battles. It's called movement, shooting, it's called communicate, move, and shoot, which if you were in the Army and in the infantry specifically, you learned how to shoot, move, and communicate. Really effective strategy for doing that kind of combat and warfare. I feel that when we're writing space battles, it's actually reversed. It's communication, which is sensors and radio and setting the scene, which we talked about last week. And then it's movement, where the ships are introduced and they're big and Goliath-like. And maybe we talk about some of the people that are involved in fighting these ships, from the captain on down to the gunner's mate. Or whatever you choose, whatever crew you choose to populate your ship with. And then in the third phase, which could be like chapter 3, if you wanted it to be, we would talk about the shooting, where we're going to invent, science fictional space weapons and have them get in there and start shooting at each other. And if you're new to writing this kind of book, which is called, on Amazon, it's known as a genre under science fiction and fantasy called Space Fleet. It's a very big genre, a lot of readers. It's a good genre to go into if you're thinking about writing this kind of book. But it's mainly like a book that would be, if you've watched TV shows, it would be like Battlestar Galactica. It could be like Star Wars. It could be like Star Trek. It's more concentrating on the military aspect of space exploration. Space exploration would be a different genre. Space Marine would be more of a ground troops version of this, but you could definitely have Space Marines be part of this. You could definitely do a Space Fleet, Space Marine crossover. Jay Canada says, hey, boss, how do I get a copy of The Old Man in the Wasteland from ya? I tried to find and can only do so on Amazon. Well, it just so happens that I just ordered 10 sets of The Old Man in the Wasteland, The Savage Boy, and The Road is a River, which is a trilogy. And I've got to ship some to people who've already bought them. And then I'll have, I think, about 6 sets left over, maybe 5. And then I will sell those if you want to get them signed. I can sell them individually, or I can sell you the whole set for a deal. So just give me a day or two to figure that out, because I got a lot going on right now. But if you are interested in getting a set, just go ahead and let me know in the comments, and I'll make sure to set that aside for you. Hey, Punchacles, Walt Robillard, it is good to see you. How is the sound? How is the lighting? I can only do so much lighting with my ugly face. I'm sorry. You have to put up with it. I guess the question I would ask you in the comments tonight is, how is your writing going? Just give us a 1 sentence. Not writing. It's great. I'm struggling, whatever. But, don't be shy. Comment and let everybody kind of know where you're at. Maybe you'll get some encouragement. Maybe you'll get some attaboys, but maybe you'll, here's the thing. Maybe you'll encourage somebody else, by them seeing that you're writing. They might go, I could write too. Writing is very rewarding. It's a lot of fun. And in this day and age, in this economy, if you follow everything that I'm kind of telling you on the channel, you could probably sell it for some extra money to help the fam pay the bills, or, maybe go on that vacation. And at the same time, maybe do something that you've kind of always wanted to do, which is monetized daydreaming. That's what I call writing. Monetized daydreaming. So we are now going to shift over. Like I said, if you have a question, just drop it into the comments on Rumble, which is kind of what I primarily look at for the comments. And then we can talk about it there. If someone sees one on Twitch, X, that's where we're at. We're on X or YouTube. Just let me know. I'm happy to outline it. I don't pay attention to those comments right now, because Rumble's kind of been the main channel. Mr. BC Walker says, outline revision. Got a second set of eyes on it. Pointed out something that I missed, and now it's revised. Isn't that outstanding? And wasn't it great to have a friendly pair of eyes? Didn't that feel encouraging? I bet you got some encouragement out of that. And someone saved you a big mistake, because I've missed things, but I hire people to help me. And I have 2 frontline editors. I have some beta readers, alpha readers really is what they are. Then I pay a very expensive editor, and I have, things have gotten by, but it's great when those people come in and say, if you'll just touch this up here or whatever, this will all make sense. The novel that I'm going to be putting out later this summer was very complex, and I needed all the eyes on it that I could get. And so I really had some great help. And the comments that I'm getting back from the beta readers right now is that it worked. It was it was a complex story. It is a murder mystery set in fantasy, in a dungeon crawl specifically. And also like a big, very expansive kind of big, not Game of Thrones, but Game of Thrones kind of very high fantasy world. And there was a lot of moving parts. And so I had thanks to God, some really great people who were able to come in and say, you've dropped this. I'm not perfect. I need help. So we all need help. And so, man, what a great thing you had there, and whoever helped you, feel free to give them a shout out. Maybe they want to help some other writers. We could all use some help. Jay Canada says, I will be ready to edit my Dune bit live in a week. Terrified, but ready. Feel free to come on the channel and practice it. And let's do that. And then you also shout out what you're doing. You have a new review site that everybody might want to get to know. called Backwoods Books. So I think that's pretty awesome. But let's jump on over to the document that we're going to work on tonight, which is going to be share screen here. And I'm going to call this document right here, share. Okay. So remember about maybe a month ago or a little bit more, we outlined a Space Marine story. We outlined that, I'm pretty sure, top to bottom. And I could go in and look for it real quick in writing, and I could see where it's at. But I remember outlining that recently. And where did that go? I remember outlining that book, but I guess we'll just have to kind of find it later. But we outlined that top to bottom, like bottom to finish, and we even talked about the books that would kind of follow on in there. So that was pretty cool. What we're going to do tonight is work on Battleships of Orion by me, Nick Cole. I prefer to use a lowercase by right here. Remember, you're all going to see what a bad typist I am. So that'll make you feel good. You're also going to see a lot of, I call this live writing, where I just write live in front of you for as long as you can take it, or me. Proper format for setting up a manuscript, just to touch this. You're going to do the title here. You're going to say who it's by. And it used to be back in the day that you'd kind of go down to 1/3 of the page, but who really cares? Just my editors and my formatters see this, so they don't really care either. You would have chapter 1, and I might say under this, contact. Now, contact, we've all seen The Hunt for the Red October, Crimson Tide, or, some space movies where, the guy at the sensors yelled out, contact! And we knew, like, okay, this is the beginning of intense drama. You know what I mean? Now, we're literally going to write together the first line of this book. And I don't want to scare you to death, but this is probably the most important line you're ever going to write in a book, because the first line really grabs people. I think in Forgotten Ruin, I've been told repeatedly that is a great first line. I think it was something like, I knew I could speak Elvish when I began to dream in it. Like, it's just this, like, it's a line that almost makes no sense because no one's read any of the book. And now you set this first line. And so there's a lot of weight on it. Like when you get to this point, chapter 1, contact, and suddenly you've got to write this great line. You know how many people, this is where they stop because they're so bummed out about that first line. Like, it's got to be something, the old man in the sea. It's got to be something with gravitas, the winter leaves wrapped around, or you could be an uncertain writer where you're trying to, like, I don't know how to get into this story. Okay, let's set ourselves free. Let's not write the first line. Let's write the second line. And the more that you write this book, the more time that you'll have to think about a great line. So why don't we just play a little game and put little parentheses so you don't freak yourself out here. Insert first line here. Note. I should take off caps lock. Note. Make it really good. See, I bet there's not a writing class in the world that'll teach you that trick. But there you go. You're free. Hey, someone gave us $10 in the chat. Who was that? Who did that? Crow. Thank you. Contact. Thank you for supporting the chat. I am going to spend that money on coffee. That is so kind. Coffee and well, I don't need to spend it on tacos because I still got a grip ton of carnitas meat from the weekend. Okay, so insert first line here. Unless, like some people, you've been sitting around thinking about a great first line. It could be something like, near space around the dead moon that would be the site of the day's stellar slaughter felt cold and even angry. You could write something overheated and gay like that. Okay. I might put like near space. Maybe we're starting to evolve terms to describe the battle. Near space means, like, hey, local space, not the big, vast, star-speckled emporium. But in this one sentence, we said near space around the dead moon that would be the sweet. How about site? Site of the day's stellar slaughter felt cold and even angry. That could be a first line. Feels a little 70s, feels a little overheated, but yay. Let's make that line number 2 unless a better line comes along. I'm here to set you free in a lot of your writing because I know that you're bound up by a lot of stuff. And I know that one of the biggest things you're bound up is by being great, by being good, because there's a constant chorus of voices just like Jake Hanna was talking about being terrified. They're telling you that you can't do it. Well, I'm here to tell you that you can do it. Don't worry about being great. Don't worry about being good. Just worry about telling the story. So in the second line there, if I have a better first line that I think of in my sleep or, when I'm out doing CrossFit or working out or going on road marches, I'll put it in there. Maybe that first line comes to me as I write the rest of the book. That often happens. Maybe I might rewrite it during the rewriting, but I want to get into the writing. I don't want to sit there and play this stupid movie 90s, 80s television actor game of having writer's block. No such thing. There's no such thing as writer's block. Just start writing. Just start writing the actions. Just start writing the spaceship shot. The crew was damaged. Blah, blah, blah. Just write down the events that are going to happen and then color in those events. That's all you got to do. But, here we started. I thought, we should set the scene a little bit. If I say near space around the dead moon that would be the site of the day's stellar slaughter felt cold and even angry. I might follow that up with something as though it were some meal made for some dark and angry giant that had never known love or life. Okay, still being a little overheated. Now we're going to get into the ship stuff. Because someone's reading this, they know it's a ship novel. They know they bought it. They know all this kind of stuff. But now I need to actually put in the ships. And I'm going to hint that there are ships right now. Though it was only 0. You have to know military time here. 0, 4, 5. See, I'm terrible because my microphone's in the way. I kind of look at my keyboard when I talk. There was only 0, 4, 5 hours. And remember, we can make mistakes. Don't go back and fix stuff. Just tell the story. There was only 0, 4, 5 hours of the quote unquote new day. So new day shipboard time. Oh my gosh, there's a shipboard. There's a ship here because there's shipboard time. This hints that it's almost like the camera is starting in, it started with the view of the dead moon. And then its life was spaced and it felt like a dark and angry giant. It was simmering with lifelessness and a lack of love. And then now, we're hinting at a ship. What are we seeing? Are we seeing a shadow across the moon? Are we seeing some ship come into view? We've just announced shipboard time. There's almost a camera aspect. And, in film, we can do two things. We can start wide and go close. That's intimate. We can start close and go wide. That's revelatory. So we can do the same thing in writing, and I think in writing. And so that's kind of what we're doing here. We're perhaps starting wide, near space, a dead moon, the galaxy in the background. And now we're closing in on a ship. What are we saying about that ship? There was only 045 hours of the New Day shipboard time. The crew, and don't get hung up on names. You could say the Enterprise, and you can change it later. You can say the Excelsior, but I'm going to call it the crew of the Adamant. That sounds, like a name that a ship would be named. This is the kind of name that tells us a lot about people. Like ships used to be named. Let me change this real quick. Shipboard. The crew of the Adamant had been at battle stations for hours now. Okay, so that sentence is a hot mess with all kinds of little corrections. We all know what battle stations are. We have no idea what battle stations are. If you're going, the crew of the Adamant. Okay, if you're going to write ships, I have found that if you just go ahead and italicize them, when the name comes up, people don't make a mistake. Why in the hell is that saying battle stations? I'm going to go with add to dictionary, battle stations. Maybe it should be hyphened. Okay. Though it was only 045 hours of the New Day shipboard time, the crew of the Adamant had been at battle stations for hours now. Okay. What? There's a ship. We started with the moon. Now there's a ship. You forgot the L. That's what I did. Thank you. Thank you. There was only 045 hours of the New Day shipboard time. The crew of the Adamant had been at battle stations for hours now. Okay. Well, that tells us something. There's a ship called the Adamant. Seems kind of like resolute, strong, redoubt, revenge. These are the kind of ships that they used to maybe 18th century name ships, as opposed to what they do now in the U.S. military, which is name them after people, which I feel is kind of stupid. But that's just my opinion. It's not a reflection on the people in the service. It's just, I think calling, a ship a guy's name is kind of dumb. And it's not very cool for science fiction, because if we're doing the science fiction universe, no one knows that guy. Like you could say the USS Barack Obama carrier. Okay, you would know who Barack Obama is. But in the future, what are we going to, the USS Quincy Quigley. I have no idea who Quincy Quigley was. He a hero? Was he a senator? Was he some chungo? You could write a story where they do name that, and you could, perhaps you're doing something dystopian and talking about how just, weird that is. But if we're going to write like a battle novel, we kind of want to get into the martial aspect. So I think the Adamant is cool. You could have a different name, the Revenge, the Renown, the Resolute. Yeah, the Adamant is cool. That tells us it's stalwart. It's plucky. It's been at battle stations for hours now. Okay, now we're into a little bit of the drama. They have been at battle stations for hours now. Now you're saying, what do I write next? I don't know. After this paragraph, why don't you say why they've been at battle stations? See, in writing, if you ever get lost or you feel like you're flummoxed or whatever, just keep answering the questions of the last paragraph. Throw some description out and then justify that description. Add a who, add a what, add a when, add a where, add a why. When you're writing a book, you are informing the readers about what's going on. Remember, someone picked up this book. They have no idea who the Zogari Alliance is or Admiral Quincy Quigley. They have no idea. You've got to, just like a little baby in a kiddie pool, you got to dip him into the water. You got to let him figure it out. So that's what we're doing here. We've established that we've hinted that there is going to be a battle. We have hinted the battle space, which is this dead moon out in space. Doesn't seem very important. You find that a lot of battles, they're often fought in very unimportant places because of reasons. We could get into those reasons. Now we're getting into, it's a ship. What kind of ship? Well, we don't know what kind of ship it is. We know that it's called the Adamant. And we know that everybody on board the ship has been at battle stations for what would be hours now. So in reading that paragraph, I might say to myself, I think it's imperative that I answer why they have been at battle stations. And my answer to that is going to have to be some backstory, some things that have gone on before this happened. You could get lost in the weeds and talk about, why they'd been at battle stations and the entire, Zolgari alliance. There are no Zolgaris in this novel. And how they'd had a history of civil war and these things that happened. You could spend the next 56 pages explaining why they are at battle stations. I would encourage you at this point not to do that. You can do those info dumps later at your own peril, but you haven't done the work yet of convincing people that they should continue reading this novel. You haven't told them, like, this novel, if I was to look at the cover, I'd see a big ship exchanging fire with another ship. The girl who bought this book or the guy who bought this book, they picked it up because they like it when plucky crews fight each other to the death. That's their jam. They like that. That's why they bought this book. If you suddenly go into a 56-page dissertation on the royal bloodline of the Zolgaris, you have not delivered on the basic premise of the description, or more importantly, the cover, which is 90% of by decision. So if two big ships are fighting, I probably better get to that pretty PDQ. I probably better make a good first chapter in which people feel that they're going to get some full-on combat. You know what I mean? And then they're like, okay, this is good. Now, you might ask, to digress, why that is important. Well, it's not like the old Walden Books days where you bought the book and they didn't let you read it in the store, and then you went and you got some caramel corn, and then you went to the movie, and then you went to the arcade, and then you went to Carl's Jr.'s and got some zucchini fries, and then you probably went and saw a movie, and then about 11:30 that night, you crawled into bed with a novel, a paperback novel, and you started reading it. You bought that novel. That is your novel. You are probably going to read it even if it's bad. Well, in the day and age of Amazon and in the day and age of Kindle Reads, they could read one sentence and say, not for me. Do you understand why now? I'm sorry to scare you. That first sentence is important. Start writing. Get into the novel. Tell the story. But really work on that first sentence. It's probably not good enough. Don't freak out about it. But remember, you're working with people that will not read this book based on the first sentence, and they'll just go on to the next Kindle Reads. Now, you get paid on Kindle Reads by the page read. So you have to fight. I think it's a good system. You have to fight for every page for that reader's attention, meaning you have to bring your A game. No phoning it in, no word count, no I'm kind of lost. I'm going to do 56 pages of the Zolgari bloodlines. Unless you can make that really interesting. And remember, Moby Dick is basically, a lot of it is about the different types of whales, and it's considered the greatest novel ever. But is it really? Let's do a mem. Is it really? No, it's not the greatest novel ever. It's got some good themes, but it's pretty boring. So in the Thunderdome of Kindle Reads, you're going to really need to make every page pop. So we have introduced the tension of a battle around a dead moon. We've introduced the ship. We have introduced the crew. They're obviously tired. We set that up. It's a new day. 0445 hours is literally 45 minutes after midnight, ship time. They have set their ship clocks to probably the world that they come from. We should establish that. I don't even know. I'm going to make it up with you right here. And that's the beginning of their day, the beginning of their watches. Now, I am not a Navy guy. I am an Army guy. I will get things wrong. I will have Navy readers come in and read this for me and say, yeah, we don't call it that. or this is when this is, and blah, blah, blah. And I will take their comments and criticisms and I will improve my novel with the gift of their observations and their learned experience in being in the Navy, which I can then download onto this. I would say to you, don't just make things up, especially about the military, because there's too many veteran readers. And they might say like, hey, that's not how the Navy was. And you're like, I know, but this is the Navy in the far future and everybody's a sergeant. That's not how it works. They have chiefs and stuff like that. And I'm going to get all that wrong, but I have lots of Navy friends who read my books. And so they'll help me get it right and we'll have a good time. And a lot of the people, they want to get it right. They're proud of their service and they want to share it with each other, a lot of people. So you bypass this opportunity to improve your novel by having people with experience read it, because it'll really improve it. It'll make it better. And when veterans read it, they really like it when somebody gets it right. Okay. Enough talk, enough rabbit trails. I got to explain why they've been at battle stations. How do we explain that? Well, how about we do something like, remember it's called Battleships of Orion. The Orion Naval, now we invent some science stuff. The Orion Naval Deep Scan and Survey Facility at, now we got to kind of name a space place. At, let's call it at Harbinger. It's in my brain because I played Halo the other day. At Harbinger's belt would indicate an asteroid field, had detected anomalous, that's always a Star Trek word, anomalous sensor readings around the super gas giant at Beltran. Let's call it something else. At Cygnus. How's that? That sounds spacey. The Orion Naval Deep Scan and Survey Facility at Harbinger's Belt had detected anomalous sensor readings around the super gas giant at Cygnus. We'll call it at Cygnus Station. Makes it sound more cool. Adamant. The Adamant, as usual, was dispatched out to check near space and confirm no enemy contact from the, now we're going to introduce the enemy. Who's the enemy? Here's the big reveal. Guess what? It's us. I kind of thought about that. It's the Terrans. A lot of the time in space stuff, the Earth is known as the Terrans. So what we've said here is, though it was only 045 hours of the New Day shipboard time, the crew of the Adamant had been at battle stations for hours now. The Orion, now we're going to explain why they have been. The Orion Naval Deep Scan and Survey Facility at Harbinger's Belt had detected anomalous sensor readings around the super gas giant at Cygnus Station. Cygnus Station. Yeah, let's call it Cygnus Station. The Adamant, as usual, remember, we can make that italicized so people always recognize it as a ship. Maybe we should talk about what kind of ship it is. The Adamant, as usual, is dispatched out to check near space and confirm no enemy contact for Terrans. Now we can tell you what kind of ship. For the veteran battle cruiser, this was standard work. Now that the simmering conflict between the ancient home world, which would be the Terrans, and the Orion Technate, meaning they're like a technological kind of home world. Homeworld. Medusa thinks that's funny.
Walt had said, I don't know if you saw it, is it Battleships of Sergeant Orion? Because Jake had originally used his mind.
I know. Could it be about, I like to reuse a lot of the terms and words in all of my books. And there's a reason for that. And one day I will finish the Red King and you will understand why. It's all interconnected.
You did finish it.
Weird. You will finish the Weird series, which is the Red King, which most likely I have it kind of like, it was free on Amazon for a long time. It's 4 books. I'm on the verge of actually taking it down permanently. And I will probably redevelop it as a lead magnet for my site this summer. So you'll get it for free just for signing up for the site. So don't think that you've got to run out and buy the Amazon version tonight because it's going away forever.
Red King's free, right?
No, I had to take the Red King down off of being free from because Amazon gave me a hard time about that. So the Orion Naval Deep Scan Survey Facility at Harbinger's Belt had detected anomalous sensor readings around the supergas giant at Sigma Station. The Adamant, as usual, is dispatched out to check near space and confirm no enemy contact from the Terrans. For the veteran battlecruiser, this was standard work now that the simmering conflict between the ancient homeworld and the Orion Technate had entered its latest argumentative phase. Kind of sounds familiar. What's going on with Iran and stuff like that. Argumentative phase. So what we've got here is we've got a ship out there that's getting enemy contact signals, and it's going out there to check that out. Doesn't that kind of sound like Tom Clancy, Crimson Tide? So, we're not necessarily writing Star Trek here. We're not necessarily writing Star Wars. We're writing something a little more perhaps real, a little more grounded in that kind of that kind of warfare. And remember, this is the communications phase of writing these kind of novels. It's communications, movement, and then the shooting. And that's, I think, going to be a good payoff for, what? Maybe you just want to do shoot, move, and communicate. That's not bad either. But for me, I want to explain a little before we just start throwing people into a battle willy-nilly. I would almost wonder if we could write a communications chapter, a movement chapter, and a shoot chapter, and then play with the order of them and see what works. But I'm guessing it's going to be communicate, move, and shoot. So follow me for more bad advice. All right. Argumentative phase. So now we're going to talk about. We remember I said we should tell what kind of ship the Adamant is. Apparently, it's a veteran battlecruiser. Veteran indicating this is not a new, fresh off the line ship. This is a ship that's been through some shit, and it's a battlecruiser. And it's not just a cruiser; it's a battlecruiser, meaning it's based on a cruiser hull, but it's heavily armed. It's even more heavily armed than a standard cruiser. So this is a ship that's expecting contact. This is probably a good crew that's been through some stuff, and they're ready to get into it. Contact came 5 minutes later. When the sensor operator in the CIC, Tom Clancy language, Combat Information Center. People love acronyms, especially military veteran. Contact came, so remember I said we want to get to it. Contact came 5 minutes later when the sensor operator in the CIC detected 3 battleship class, that's not a good way to say that. It's detected 3 massive ships. And then how massive? Well, we could say standard feet and all that kind of stuff, or we could jump in and make it more explainable so that people can understand this. Contact came 5 minutes later when the sensor operator in the CIC detected 3 massive ships. And now we can explain this by comparativeness, by comparison. Each triple the length of the battle cruiser Cruiser. Why can I? Oh, because cruiser adamant. Adjust. Maybe a little bit of italicized there. Contact came in the CIC 3 minutes. Detected contact. Contact came 5 minutes later when the sensor operator in the CIC detected 3 massive ships, each triple the length of the battle cruiser Adamant. Let's give him some dialogue, because dialogue is fun. What would a guy say at this point? He's probably going to swear, but he is a trained military guy, and he's trained at his job, and he's probably going to say something that indicates, and I'll probably get this wrong. I'll write something down here that I think sounds like naval military stuff. But again, that was not what I did in the military, so I don't know. But thankfully, I'm going to have some Navy guys read this, and maybe they know exactly how to do it. But I should have kind of a philosophy of what sort of a report like this would be. And I'm going to say what, where, and okay, so we go. He's going to shout, battleships. Where? Heading. Points of the compass. I'm going to use, 360 degrees. I'm going to use, we know that 180 is like south. And this is the part that I'll get wrong or whatever. Like when he says heading, he probably means from his ship so that people can be aware of where the enemy ships are relative to his position. So the front of the ship or the bow would be 360 degrees, as in true north, 0 or 360. And we're going to put these at 58 degrees. Okay, so that's just a little past 45. So that would be the 3 o'clock hand on the no, that would be the 2 o'clock hand or the 1:30 hand on the clock. 90 degrees, right, would be 15, would be like 3 o'clock, 15 minutes. And 180 degrees would be 6 o'clock or to the immediate rear. So at 58 degrees, these things are just past 45 degrees. And then my knowledge of watching various shows is going to tell me that they're going to say something like bearing. What does that mean? Bearing, battleships, heading, battleships. Oh, you know what? Because we call this thing, he's going to yell contact. Remember, that's at the very beginning of the chapter. Contact, battleships. 3, heading. He's giving a report, a sit rep, as we would call it back in the day. Heading 58 degrees, bearing. What are they bearing? They're bearing right down on us. So we would have to go to the reverse of 58 degrees, meaning they're, like if they're, oh, maybe I can show it. I have a little camera. Okay. So they're going head on, and these ships are coming from this angle over here to my right, meaning they're heading this way. So they're just past 180. So we'll call it like 195, bearing 195. You would say something like 195. 195 would be back in the day. I'd probably have to go back and readjust that. Heading 58 degrees. I would say 5. In the military, we would say 5'8". 5'8 degrees, bearing 195. Doesn't that sound like military speak? Yay, we're being authentic. Navy guys will come and correct me. That will improve the novel. But I don't want to slow it down and get on a call with my old buddy, Salty Seaman, and have him tell me, oh, no, this is how we do it and everything like that, because I'm writing right now. That can be later. That can be developing information. I could watch Crimson Tide. I could watch Hunt for the Red October. I could read some Tom Clancy novels. But right now, we just want to tell the story. And what we've told is we've arrived around a planet. There's going to be a battle. Here's the ship that's going to be in the battle. So are they kind of the heroes? We don't know. But now you threw us a curveball. The Terrans are coming in. Wait, I'm from Earth. I'm a Terran. Am I the enemy or am I the good guys? I don't know. This battle's probably going to tell us what's going on. Contact battleships 3 heading 58 degrees, bearing 195. Okay, he shouts this, so we get to use an exclamation point. Cool. All right. At almost the same moment, the weapons sensor station officer rattled off a report regarding the hull scans of weapon mounts and hardpoints. Okay, this guy maybe seems a little cooler. Maybe he's not going to get all like, contact, battleship 3, heading 58 degrees, you know, like slavering with spit. Maybe he's going to say something a little more droll in here. Oh, for later, contact, secret message in the chat. Contact, battleships 3, heading 58 degrees, bearing 195. At almost the same moment, the weapons sensor station officer rattled off a report regarding the hull scans of weapon mounts and hardpoints. And it's sometimes like, it's easy to get in there writing everybody like super, you know, blah, blah, blah. But all, you know, like in various tense situations, like contact with the enemy, there are people that get all hyper and there are people that keep it cool. And for a, hey, Tom KP, $10. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. That is much appreciated. You know, there are different, like, when the narrator is reading this book, and I really encourage you to think about that, because that is 50, like audiobooks are 50% of your income. So you want to write thinking about each person being a different voice, a different character. These are nondescript characters. Spoiler, these people aren't going to survive the battle. So we don't need to get into their names. We just need to give their things and just show, like, just think of this as a moment. Like, you know, the contact battleships, maybe that's played by like a cool, like if we think back to when I actually used to watch movies in the 90s, maybe that's a young Christian Slater, you know, with a very tense, like, contact battleships 3 heading 58 degrees, bearing 195. You know, like this guy's into the battle, but maybe the weapons sensor station officer rattled off a report. Rattle, kind of easy, kind of business. Nope, been here before. Maybe he's an easy breezy Jude Law kind of character. He might go with something informal. And because I said this is a veteran crew, when a crew works together a lot, they have a tendency to fall away from the standard official prose, especially if they've got a good working relationship. He might say something like, they're loaded for bear. I don't want to get into all the weapons. Like, he could say they're loaded for bear, meaning he's the weapons sensor station officer, meaning he's scanning their ship and he's seeing that all their main batteries have power to them. If they have like energy type to work. And again, I don't know what kind of weapons they are. So at this point, I don't want to, because I'm just making this up with you. I don't want to immediately get into the weapons right now, because again, that is a 58-page on the royal lineage of the Zodori, you know, line of succession. You're getting in the weeds. I'm trying to get them into this. Like, remember in a James Bond movie, like, it's usually kind of a cool, tense lead up and some action, and then we get to James Bond back home, and then Q gives him M gives him the mission, and then Q gives him the gadgets. The audience gets a chance to catch their breath. Now we get into, oh, you're going to go on this dangerous mission to get this dangerous thing. But usually when we join James Bond or we join Indiana Jones, they are at the end of something. Something is all coming together. It could have something to do with the stuff that happens later, but we're trying to get people really emotionally invested in this book right off the bat, because remember, there's a certain portion of the audience, probably about 30 to 40%, maybe less, they get to pick and choose at what point they want to dip in and out of this novel. They don't have to go back to Walden Books the next day and return the book. They can just let it go and pick up another book that's in Kindle Unlimited Reads right now. So we've got to get into it for them because they really want to get into this. So we got the first sensor. He's like, contact battleships 3 heading 58 degrees, bearing 195. And at the same moment, we have the weapons station guy. He's a little cooler. You know, uniform is like put together, dreamy eyes, nice hair. And he looks over at everybody and he goes, they're loaded for bear. To the crew, what does this mean? It means we're at battle stations. They're heading right at us because that would be maybe, you know what? Now that I just said that, that would be cool because what I've done here is I've done something to get into the weeds that might lose people who don't know stuff. So I might, even though it's going to change later when Walt tells me what the hell I'm doing, contact battleships 3 heading 58 degrees, bearing 195. In my head, I have probably done the math, but I see that I want these guys headed right at these guys. This battleship formation knows exactly where these dudes are at, and they're going to kill them. So maybe I need to have the sensor guy say something kind of emphatic. So I'm going to put it all in caps because I can do anything I want. Okay, what's the question?
So maybe I missed this, but how do you make characters like this feel important? You said they're not going to make it, but you don't want the reader to know that right away.
Right. Tom KP asks, how do we make characters feel important? Well, the drama, okay, so in this type of thing, we're going to be exposed to what the situation is. The situation, as I've just kind of thought about it as I got ready for the show, is that most of the galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, is now settled by the descendants of humanity that went out into the stars. And if you read the Foundation series with Isaac Asimov, what happened is they developed a lot of little micro empires. The galaxy was too big to be administered by one giant government, like in Star Wars. And Star Wars kind of reflects that too. You know, obviously the Empire is having a hard time managing everybody. And it's not to say that you can't have a giant galactic government managing everything like we did in Galaxy's Edge. You just have to decide what kind of story that you want to tell. What the story that I kind of want to tell here is something much more Cold War, Tom Clancy, Red Storm Rising, that kind of stuff, but in space. And that means I need enemies, just like back in the 80s. I need a big enemy, the Russians, and I need a little enemy, the Americans. And that's kind of how it was during the Cold War. So what I'm establishing here is that it seems that the Terrans have really big battleships, and they're coming to smoke this dude. We don't know yet what the sides of the battle are. We will find that out later. But what I need to deliver on in this first chapter, Tom, is the cover, because cover is 90% of battle of buy decision. And someone bought this cover because they saw 2 battleships slugging it out. And again, like if you come into my restaurant and you say, I want biscuits and gravy, it's on the menu, you make biscuits and gravy, I better serve biscuits and gravy. If I serve them pâté le fortois gras with pommes frites and neuf and a sauce Diane over the, you know, filet mignon and all this kind of stuff, and I try to show them what a genius are, and the guy's like, I ordered biscuits and gravy. I'm not serving the customer. And again, as a writer, it is my job to serve the customer. The customer bought a battleship novel. In the first chapter, if I get into all the important characters, I will lose them. So I need to set a chapter that says, you wanted a space battle, here we go. I will get to the important characters later. Now, if you wanted to put an important character right in here off the bat, I could right now introduce, and it's very common to have the captain. You know what I mean? I could make the captain here important. But because in my heart, I'm more interested in setting up the political situation that causes the home world, which is probably has become large and bloated and probably bad and sort of like trampling on the rights of the free, which are the people who went out into space and built their own little, planets, and those planets turned into trading empires. And they kind of like the way that they're kind of like, just like the US and Britain, America and Britain back in the day. Britain's kind of showing up to say, you shall worship the king and pay us taxes. It's very simply put. That's what's happening in this book. You shall worship the king of world, of Earth, and you shall pay Earth your taxes. And the Orion Technate is out here in sort of, what we'll describe as the Orion Empire. And they've got maybe 5 or 6 systems, and they've got some ships, and they've got the home ground, and they're like, we're tired of paying taxes. Hey, won't you shove off? That kind of thing. It's an American Revolution. Maybe we're telling the American Revolution in space, but with Tom Clancy. I don't know. I'm figuring this out with you, but I have a rough sketch in my head. And right now, I need to deliver on the promise of the cover before I get to the important characters. Now, I think, in a very minimal sense, that short chapters are very good. And I might rewrite this chapter more, but I'm tempted to call chapter 1 done. Let's just go through it real quick, which is something I advise you never to do on your own. Just keep writing forward, keep writing to the next chapter. It's all bad. It all sucks. In fact, you know what? I'm not going to correct anything when I read back through this with you. I'm just reading back to show you. The purpose of this exercise was to show you a philosophy to write spaceship battles. Communicate, move, and shoot. Tonight's episode was communicate. What does that mean? In the world of space stuff, it means sensors and defining the enemy and showing everybody what's about to happen. Next week, we'll move on to move. Okay, now we know it's the Terrans and the Orions. What's going to happen? How are they going to move? The movement is going to, in the movement, we're going to introduce some characters. We might introduce the evil characters. We could try that. We might write two. We might write 2 chapters, one from the evil side and one from the Orion side, one from the Terran side, one from the Orion side. See which side you like. We could do that. I don't know. We'll figure that out because we're making it up together as we go. But we'll start off with this. Battleships of Orion by Nick Cole. We'll see if we delivered on the promise. Remember, the cover I haven't paid for yet is 2 ships slugging it out. You can find dozens, if not hundreds, of these books on Amazon. And there is a dedicated, large group of people who read these kind of books. So if this is the kind of book that you want to write, there's a base of readers that you can reach by putting 2 ships or a lot of ships slugging it out, or a picture of a pretty ship. And then in the first chapter, talking about ships, not the bloodlines of the Royal Zodanis, not the simmering conflict between Terran and Orion, not, the captain and what he had for breakfast and how great he was, and how the ensign who with the pretty short skirt just wanted to make love to him and all these kinds of things. No, I put 2 ships fighting on the cover. I better kind of get to that. I could have started with Shu. I could have said something like the first salvos off the Terran battleships tore into the superstructure of the Adamant, killing 25% of the crew in one volley, savaging the shields. I could have done that. If you'd like me to write it from that, we could do that. But I chose to write it from communication, which is going to be sensor contacts. Let's see if we did that. So the first thing we wrote is chapter 1, contact. And then we gave ourselves a break and we said, insert first line here. No, make it really good. Meaning, take the burden off writing the first line. I think that first line stumbles a lot of people. You don't have to do it now. You can do it later. You can think up something really good. You can poll test it. I don't know. Then I took a stab at it, just to take a stab at it. Near space around the dead moon that would be the site of the day's stellar slaughter felt cold and even angry. Okay, that's the setting. Okay, that's the thing that you learn in writing you're supposed to do. as though it were some meal made for some dark and angry giant that had ever known love or life. Okay, it's a little purple, it's a little alliteration, but you're a writer and you should try to evoke some feeling. So someone who's reading about space feels like, something's about to happen here, but it feels cold and impersonal and even kind of like anxious, threatening. I don't know. Though it was only 045 hours of the new day shipboard time, the crew of the Adamant had been at battle stations for hours now. Why? The Orion Naval Deep Scan Survey Facility at Harbinger's Belt had detected anomalous sensor readings around the supergas giant at Sigma Station. We don't even know where those places are, but we'll figure them out later. But mainly, we're giving a little bit of geography. No one knows anything, but people like stuff. The Doom Mountains, the Dark River, the Wild Wood, just like you do in a fantasy station. And I was talking about those babies. The reader's a little baby, little 1-year-old baby. And you got to take his and you're taking him into the kiddie pool for the first time. You don't just throw him in the deep end and say, swim. You dip him in. You ease them in. It's a new sensation. I don't know your world yet. Show me around. Remember, I believe that you're never wrong in writing a travel guide of the world that you're asking the reader to dip into. You don't have to explain everything. I didn't need to go into the history of Harbinger's Belt. I didn't need to tell you who was in charge at Sigma Station. It just says the Orion Naval Deep Scan Facility, survey facility at Harbinger's Belt had detected anomalous sensor readings. Okay, that means like they triggered some stuff and they were like, we better, just like, in the military, in the army, in the infantry, we better send the scouts out or do a recon in force and see why we're getting some signal from that grid square, and we don't have anything there. We don't know what's going on. Someone needs to go out and look at it. And that's what we're doing in space. The Adamant, as usual, is dispatched out to check near space and confirmed no enemy contact from the Terrans. That's not going to happen. For the veteran battlecruiser, this was standard work now that the simmering conflict between the ancient homeworld and the Orion Technic had entered its latest argumentative phase. That, not to toot my own horn, is great. Because again, in this first chapter where we're delivering on the cover, and you really need to hear me here. I'm going to say it one more time. I know you want to explain everything because it's going to make you feel more confident about writing this. You need to operate with a little bit of freedom. You need like there's no safety net. Just do your tricks. But in this phrase right here, without talking about 200 years of history, I know that makes you feel safer. You're warming up to the writing, all that kind of stuff. Again, you're going to lose the promise of the cover of two ships fighting. And the Kindle Unlimited's reader could turn this off. Audible has the same thing. They could go, this just feels like an info dump. Just get right into it. And with just that one sentence, the simmering conflict between the ancient homeworld, probably Earth, and the Orion Technate. Who are those guys? Orion, that's a star system. Technate, that sounds like the word Khanate, which was a form of governorship in the Middle East based around Khans, but technology, that's interesting, had entered its latest argumentative phase. So we know that these two galactic powers are not getting along. Anybody watching the news right now can figure that out. And we did it in one sentence without getting into a 56-page dissertation on the Zodari bloodline. Remember, I said we got to get into it. So we can't waste anything. Contact came 5 minutes later, when the sensor operator in the CIC means Combat Information Center. I could take a moment, and sometimes I do this thing called, no, I said I wouldn't do it, but I do this thing called first usage, in which if I use an acronym, I better do it just so you see it. But remember, I don't rewrite, I just go forward. Combat Information Center. I will help the reader to understand better the story going forward. So if I use an acronym, I will go ahead and type it out in full after using it. One time only. Contact came 5 minutes later when the sensor operator in the CIC, Combat Information Center, detected 3 massive ships, each triple the length of the battlecruiser Adamant. How big is the Adamant? I don't know. I just made it up. I needed relative comparison to show that this thing is in over its steps. Okay. So I just said it's 3 times the length. Great. Whee! And I said battleships. Remember, it's called Battleships of Orion. So now that reader is like, oh, sweet, this dude got right to the battleships. He didn't spend 568 pages of suspense building to have the battleship finally come out. No, he got right to the battleships. Does the reader feel a reward? I bet they do. Does that mean the reader will keep reading? And does that increase the reader's satisfaction level? I'm betting that it does. That's why I did it. Follow me for more bad advice. Contact battleships 3, meaning 3. The military speak, battle speak. It's clipped. It's short. We can be clipped in our prose here because this is how they would talk in a setting. You can envision the CIC. Why don't you stop for a moment and think about the CIC? Now you're seeing it in your head, maybe soft blue lighting, maybe red lighting, maybe stations, maybe a giant digital sand table everybody's looking at and a captain staring there like, maybe he's saying something like, damn. I don't know. Here's what I would do at this moment. People understand Combat Information Center. This is a data center inside the ship that governs the war fighting of the ship. Let them build the picture of it in their head. They probably have it from seeing Battlestar Galactica or Hunt for the Red October or Crimson Tide. At your peril, you would decide to describe what you see. What you would be doing is 2 things. You would be getting in the weeds and you might lose the reader. And 2, you might ruin their vision of what they're seeing. And this is a good trick and you should understand it. If the reader envisions their vision of what you're putting in your thing, they will take more ownership of it. If you mess with their vision, they will take less ownership. It's all about getting the reader to emotionally invest in the book. And if they can visualize things and be allowed to participate in the creativity, because I do think reading and writing is a group creative effort. The end user, I'm going to say one more thing and I'm getting lost in the weeds here. The end user is the experience of the book. Don't be that writer that screams at readers because they got it wrong. No, the reader read it. They saw it a certain way. That's the experience. Try to give them enough room that they can just read it. So in a certain sense, less is kind of more. You describe things at your own peril. Be careful with that. Allow the reader to visualize that. I have said that enough. Contact battleships 3, heading 58 degrees, bearing 1905. They're headed straight at us. What does all this military speak? I'm a housewife who loves novels about like brave captains and I like fantasizing about them, or I've always been fascinated by the military, but I never served. They don't know what heading 58 degrees is. They don't know that we don't say 58. They don't say that we don't say 195. This is military speak, and it's cool, and people dig that. Now explain what that means in one sentence brilliantly like I just did. Not to toot my own horn, because we found that out after we looked at it. They're headed straight at us. Contact battleships. Ignore all the other things. They're headed straight at us. The reader's like, oh, okay, I'm in the CIC. They're getting contact. They're seeing stuff on the blippy light screens. What are they seeing? These 3 really big battleships, 3 times the size of the Adamant, are headed right at us. Oh my gosh, I am involved in tension and peril. I am taking ownership of this. I am on the deck of that ship. This is exactly what I wanted out of it. Is there any danger yet? I mean, maybe they're just swinging by to have tea and exchange goods. Maybe they're just going to like bump into each other. Maybe they're going to push each other off. Is this really going to be contact? Because when I bought this book, these 2 ships were shooting at each other. And I hope I'm going to get that because that's going to be a payoff for me. And I'm going to read every damn book this guy buys. We got 1 paragraph and 1 sentence to sell that they're going to get what they want if they hang with us in this first chapter. At almost the same moment, the weapons sensor station officer rattled off a report regarding the hull scans of weapon mounts and hard points. And I would put something in. Remember, I said I'm not going to rewrite it on the enemy ships. He just says they're loaded for bear. Meaning loaded for bear, that means they're bringing the big guns. They're charged up and ready to go. We are in deep doo-doo. And that is where we will end that chapter. Yes, I could have written a longer chapter, but sometimes, as Mark Twain used to say, I'm sorry, this letter is longer. I didn't have time to make it shorter. Sometimes it's better to do it shorter, get people involved in the Earl Grey hot. That's a good one. Yes. Get them involved in it. And I think what we've done is we've done that. Ask yourself right now, having read this, do you go to chapter 2? Do I still have your attention? Have I captured you? That is, let's go over here and look at this. There's me. Now I'm me again. Okay. So there, yeah. Hey, Crow says he would. Okay. I got one reader. I can finance a lifestyle on that one. You can use this. You can deviate it. You can do whatever you want here. I've given you some advice. I was out in the sun, so I got peeling, so I'm not disgusting. But what I always try to do in everything that I do with people is I just try to give them the truth. I'm not trying to sell you nothing. I'm not trying to bullshit you. I'm just trying to say, like, if you've watched the big science fiction movies and you've said, I would love to write something like that, it's fun to fantasize and it's fun to daydream, but there is a really big moment when you have to cross that line and you have to sit down and start organizing your thoughts into intelligent sentences that someone else who loves what you love can understand. And I don't think it's wrong if you just start writing and it's all over the place. You can get an editor that will help you. And if you do that enough, just like working out at the gym, give it enough time, your muscles will grow and you will get really good at this. What I'm trying to do is just like, I've been writing for all of my life. I wrote as a kid. I wrote in the military. I wrote as an actor in Hollywood. I wrote as a construction worker and a driver for an opera singer. I just always wrote. And in the course of writing and being published by HarperCollins and writing some very successful franchises and IPs, I have learned a few things and I am sharing them with you. Do whatever you want. But some of these things are good advice, and it never hurts to kind of have a little formula to keep yourself on track or have an outline. The only thing, this is the last thing I'm going to say, the only thing that's going to hurt your writing is you not writing. And the things that'll stop you from writing are getting lost in the weeds on that first line, your ego, not knowing how to do it, ignorance. And all I would say is just tell the story. Just tell who, what, when, and where. And start telling the action. And if you don't feel like you can come up with alliterative sentences like an angry giant and a cold meal in deep space, then just write down, the Enterprise fired at the Renown and a bunch of people were killed. Okay, it's not the greatest sentence, but it helped you to get through. And then what you could do afterwards is you could go, maybe I should break this action down a little bit and I should envision this. The Enterprise charged up her Torpon torpedoes and fired. The balls of energy streaked away like white hot hammer strikes at a blacksmith's forge. What did they do? They struck the enemy ship in the engines, exploding the left one, tearing into the superstructure of the right one, killing everybody in the aft reactor. Now you're exploring, now you're expanding. Keep tearing away at that sentence, keep improving it, and it turns into a legit space scene. And you might do better than that right off the bat. So that is tonight's show. I truly hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for supporting the show over on Rumble. Please like, subscribe, and follow the show. And let me know your comments. And next week we will return and we will do the movement phase of the communicate, move, and shoot philosophy of writing battles in space. Thank you, Jay Canada. Awesome show. Always learning something from you. Let me know about the old man. Want to review it for my page. We will get that sorted out. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful